Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone. You didn't hide who you are because you were broken. You hid because once it wasn't safe to be seen. There was a time when hiding parts of yourself felt like the only way to survive. You learned early that being fully seen wasn't safe. Maybe it was a critical word, a disappointed look, or a moment when your feelings were dismissed. And from that moment, something inside whispered that showing your true self could bring rejection or pain. So you adapted. You smiled when you wanted to cry. You said yes when you wanted to say no. You silenced the parts of yourself that felt messy, complicated, or too much. And for a long time, it worked. It kept you out of harm's way. It made you blend, fit, and belong in a world that seemed unforgiving. But the cost of that protection didn't show immediately. Over time, it settled quietly in your chest, like a shadow you didn't notice until you felt empty, distant from yourself, and unsure who you really were beneath the roles you played. The very thing that saved you in your past became the thing that made life feel smaller, lonelier. You might have believed that hiding made you strong, but strength is not hiding. It is living openly, even when it's uncomfortable. It is showing up with your truths, fears, and all the fragments of who you are. The first step is noticing when you are still holding back and remembering that your silence was once a survival tool, not a flaw. It's not weakness to have protected yourself, it's wisdom. And now you have the chance to choose differently. To reclaim the parts of yourself that you tucked away for safety, you can allow yourself to feel, to speak, and to exist without apology. Even small moments count. Sharing one hidden thought, admitting a real feeling, or standing in your truth for one tiny act of courage. These small acts are not reckless. They are the first breaths of living fully again. You didn't disappear. You protected yourself. And now you can begin to step back into the light. Piece by piece, learning that being seen is not danger. It is freedom. Even after you learn to hide parts of yourself to survive, there comes a time when the silence starts to feel heavy. At first, it's subtle. You don't notice it because you're busy managing the world around you, meeting expectations, keeping peace, avoiding conflict. But slowly, the cost of staying invisible begins to show itself in small, persistent ways. You notice a quiet dissatisfaction that lingers beneath your smiles, a subtle disconnection in your relationships, or a sense that something essential is missing. You start to realize that the parts of yourself you tucked away, the passions, the quirks, the messy emotions aren't gone. They're living quietly inside you, waiting, whispering, wanting to breathe. The problem is that hiding became your default, your safety mechanism, and for so long it served you. But now it also isolates you. It creates a gap between who you are and who you allow the world to see. You can belong everywhere and still feel profoundly alone. People may love the version of you that fits neatly into their expectations, the version that doesn't rock the boat, the version that is polite, agreeable, and safe. But deep down, you know there is more to you, more complexity, more depth, more color, and it's not being expressed. And when it isn't expressed, life starts to feel smaller. The experiences that should have been joyful feel muted. Your laughter sometimes feels like an echo. Even success can feel hollow when you realize it isn't aligned with your true self. Shame often hides behind this invisibility. You might believe that the parts of you are hiding are unworthy or flawed, that they are too much, too intense, or too unconventional. Perhaps there were moments in your life when your honesty, your emotion, or your authenticity was met with rejection, ridicule, or indifference. And somewhere in those moments, a belief formed, being fully yourself isn't safe. So you learn to shrink. You learn to mute your voice. You learn to smooth the edges of your personality so the world could tolerate you. And while that learning kept you safe, it also created an unspoken contract. In exchange for acceptance, you would sacrifice pieces of yourself. The cost of that contract is subtle at first, but undeniable over time. You start to notice it in the quiet moments alone. There's a heaviness, a gnawing sense that life is passing you by while you stay small. You may struggle with a persistent inner question, who am I if I'm not performing, if I'm not pleasing, if I'm not invisible enough to blend in? That question can feel almost dangerous because the answer threatens everything you've relied on for safety. If you are who you really are, then the shields you've built may no longer hold. And yet there's also a longing, a deep yearning that can't be silenced, a craving to be fully alive, fully seen, and fully accepted. This is where the tension of invisibility becomes palpable. You are caught between two worlds, the world you were trained to live in, where hiding was necessary, and the world you are beginning to crave, where authenticity is possible. It's not easy to navigate this space. Every time you consider showing a small piece of your truth, fear rises. Fear that someone will reject you, fear that the world isn't ready for your fullness, fear that if you take off the mask, you won't know who you are anymore. And yet, the parts of yourself that have been quiet for so long keep nudging, reminding you that hiding was never meant to be permanent. One of the hardest truths is that staying invisible can feel safe, but ultimately breeds a quiet despair. It's a slow erosion of your spirit. You might find yourself envying others who seem free to speak, free to create, free to be messy and alive. You might wonder why they appear to flourish while you remain constrained, operating under invisible rules you learned as a child, a teenager, or even recently in adulthood. The answer isn't that they are inherently braver or luckier. It's that they have begun to untangle themselves from the conditioning that taught them to shrink. And the realization hits, you can do the same. You can take the first tentative steps toward claiming your life back. The path toward authenticity begins with awareness. It begins with noticing the ways in which you are still playing small, the moments when you censor your thoughts, hold back your opinions, or soften your emotions to make others comfortable. Awareness isn't blame, it's recognition. You are not weak for hiding, you were resourceful. You learned a strategy that worked when survival depended on it. But now you have the opportunity to decide differently. You have the power to consciously choose when to step forward, when to speak your truth, when to show the parts of yourself you've kept in the shadows. The next step is compassion for yourself. As you begin to notice the cost of invisibility, it's easy to fall into self-criticism. You might think, why did I hide for so long? Why didn't I speak up sooner? But these questions overlook the reality. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time. Protecting yourself was an act of courage in its own right. The task now is not to shame yourself for the past, but to honor the lessons it taught you and to gently guide yourself toward a different way of living. Self-compassion is the bridge from survival to authenticity. Small, intentional acts of visibility are where transformation begins. It could be as simple as expressing a preference that usually goes unsaid, sharing an idea you've been holding back, or acknowledging a fear you've been ignoring. Each act is a tiny rebellion against the habit of hiding and a declaration that your presence matters. You don't have to reveal everything at once. Growth is cumulative. Over time, these small acts of authenticity create momentum, and the shadow of invisibility begins to lift. You begin to see that the world can handle your truth, that relationships can deepen when honesty is present, and that the parts of you you thought were dangerous are actually the parts that bring life, color, and meaning. Remember, the journey is not linear. There will be moments when old habits return, when fear resurfaces, and when you feel the temptation to retreat. These moments do not define failure. They are reminders of the depth of your courage. Each time you choose to step forward instead of hiding, you reinforce the possibility of living fully. Over time, the quiet loneliness fades and is replaced by a profound sense of alignment, a feeling that your inner life and outer life are no longer in conflict. Ultimately, the cost of staying invisible is measured not in dramatic loss, but in quiet suffering, the yearning for connection, the fatigue of self-censorship, the loss of intimacy with yourself. The reward for embracing visibility is measured in the deep relief of being known, the joy of being fully alive, and the strength that comes from living without apology. You are capable of reclaiming every part of yourself that you tucked away for safety. You are capable of turning the shadow of invisibility into a source of power, wisdom, and grace. This is your invitation to begin noticing where you still hide, to acknowledge the cost it has had on your life, and to take one small step toward authenticity today. It may feel uncomfortable, even frightening, but it is the most courageous work you will ever do. Every small act of truth becomes a thread in the fabric of a life fully lived, a life that is rich, messy, and profoundly yours. You can belong in the world without disappearing. You can step forward without losing yourself. And slowly, day by day, piece by piece, you can come home to who you really are. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. Many of us think it means exposing ourselves recklessly, putting all of our emotions and fears out for anyone to see. But real vulnerability is quieter, deeper, and far more courageous. It's the willingness to be seen as we truly are, even when we're afraid of judgment or rejection. It's the acknowledgement that our feelings, our thoughts, our messy, imperfect selves are worthy of being expressed, even when the world might not respond the way we hope. For so long, you learn to hide, to protect the parts of yourself that felt dangerous or too much. Vulnerability asks you to step into the very space you once avoided. The inner struggle that comes with this is real. Fear rises quickly when you consider revealing yourself. Fear that you'll be ridiculed, dismissed, or rejected. Fear that your relationships will fracture, that your world will become unstable, or that you won't be able to handle the exposure. It's the fear that kept you hidden, the same fear that whispered to you as a child or as a young adult that your truth was not safe. And yet, that fear is also a signal. It points directly to the parts of your life that have been silenced, the places where authenticity is waiting for your courage to arrive. There is a paradox to vulnerability. The very act of showing up, of speaking a truth, of letting someone in feels risky, yet it is the only path to connection. The irony is that while hiding may have protected you, it also separated you from the love, intimacy, and understanding you crave, the masks you wore, the careful edits of your personality, and the constant self-censorship created a life of quiet isolation. You may have surrounded yourself with people, but the parts of you that were hidden stayed alone. Vulnerability, in contrast, is what closes that distance. It doesn't guarantee acceptance, but it does guarantee presence. It does guarantee that your life is no longer fragmented between who you are and who you pretend to be. Opening yourself to vulnerability is not about oversharing or confessing everything to everyone. It's about small, deliberate acts of honesty that reconnect you to your own truth. It could be admitting a mistake, sharing a fear, expressing a boundary, or simply saying what you feel in a moment that matters. Each act is a seed. It may feel uncomfortable, even terrifying at first, because you are rewiring a lifetime of self-protection. You are learning to trust yourself, to trust your intuition, and to trust that being real does not automatically lead to harm. The fear will not disappear immediately, but it can be softened with practice, patience, and self-compassion. One of the hardest parts of vulnerability is confronting the messages you internalized about being too much or not enough. You may have believed that showing emotion was a weakness, that asking for help was a burden, or that your authentic desires would alienate others. These beliefs were once survival strategies. They helped you navigate a world that sometimes punished openness, but they are no longer necessary. They are old rules that can be gently rewritten. You begin to see that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. Courage is stepping into your truth, even when your heart races, even when your stomach twists, and even when you are unsure of the outcome. The emotional transformation that comes from vulnerability is profound. Each time you choose to express a truth or reveal a part of yourself, you reclaim something that was lost to hiding. You rediscover the rhythms of your own voice, the authenticity of your feelings, and the beauty of being known. Connections deepen. Relationships feel more alive. And most importantly, your relationship with yourself strengthens. You begin to realize that the person you are showing the world, the person who may feel messy, anxious, or uncertain, is exactly the person worthy of being seen, heard, and loved. Vulnerability also teaches you discernment. Not every situation or person deserves your full disclosure, and that's okay. Part of the work is learning to recognize where it is safe to step forward and where caution is necessary. You begin to distinguish between places that will honor your truth and spaces that will exploit it. This skill over time gives you freedom. It allows you to engage in the world authentically without recklessness, to be courageous without being naive. Your discernment becomes a protective tool that coexists with openness rather than opposing it. Every act of vulnerability has a ripple effect. The courage to show one small truth encourages the next. The first step may be a whisper, admitting you're struggling, expressing a hidden feeling, or setting a boundary that feels uncomfortable. But the momentum builds. You begin to notice that the world does not collapse when you are honest. You notice that relationships can survive and even thrive on the foundation of truth. You notice that self-respect deepens when you refuse to live by old rules of silence, and perhaps the most important lesson vulnerability teaches is that it is a practice, not a destination. You will never arrive at perfect openness. There will always be moments of hesitation, fear, and self-doubt. But with each act of courage, you expand your capacity to live fully. You discover that the life you are meant to live is not one of careful avoidance or quiet concealment. It is one of authenticity, presence, and wholehearted participation in your own story. The journey of vulnerability is also a journey of self-trust. You begin to understand that your feelings, your intuition, and your voice are valid, and that expressing them does not diminish you. Each time you reveal a piece of your authentic self, you reinforce the truth that you are enough, exactly as you are. The fear that once controlled your choices slowly loses its grip. You start to see that courage is built in the small, consistent acts of showing up in the quiet defiance of old habits and in the deliberate reclaiming of your voice. The invitation now is to take one step. Notice where you are still hiding. Identify one truth that has been silenced. Perhaps it's a feeling, a desire, or a boundary that you've avoided expressing. Then, in a safe way, share it. Without apology, without over-explaining, without fear. It may feel uncomfortable, it may stir old anxieties, but with each act you reclaim the power that hiding once stole. You begin to feel alive in ways that have been dormant for years. You discover that the courage to be vulnerable is not only the courage to risk rejection, it is the courage to finally connect with life as it was meant to be experienced, fully, honestly, and unapologetically. Vulnerability is the gateway to authenticity. It transforms isolation into connection, fear into courage, and self-doubt into self-respect. It is the bridge between survival and living, between hiding and being fully known. Each moment you practice it is a declaration: I am here, I am enough, I will not disappear to make the world comfortable. And in that declaration, your life begins to expand, to breathe, and to align with the truth that has always been inside you. Choosing yourself is never easy. For so long, you were trained to prioritize others, to shape your words and actions to fit the expectations of those around you. You learned early that safety often meant compliance, that love and acceptance came with conditions, and that stepping forward with your own needs could feel selfish, risky, or even dangerous. And over time, those lessons became habits, invisible scripts running quietly in the background of your life. You learned to put your desires, feelings, and truths on hold so that the world could feel stable and manageable. But the deeper truth is that while this kept you safe, it also kept you small. It kept you from living the life you were meant to live. The struggle of choosing yourself comes with fear of disappointment, fear of conflict, and fear of rejection. It feels almost instinctual to shrink back into old patterns, to prioritize the comfort of others over your own authenticity. You might notice yourself asking, if I honor my own needs, will I still be loved? Will I still belong? That question can echo loudly in your mind, and the answer often feels uncertain. But the reality is that the cost of ignoring yourself is far greater than the discomfort of temporary disapproval. Each time you dismiss your feelings, silence your voice, or hide your true self, you reinforce the belief that your presence is negotiable. And the truth is, it is not. You are not an optional part of life. Your needs, feelings, and truths matter as much as anyone else's. Choosing yourself requires courage. It requires the bravery to confront decades of conditioning, to sit with discomfort, and to act even when fear is present. This courage is not reckless. It is deliberate and compassionate. It begins with small decisions. Saying no when you would usually say yes, setting a boundary where there was none before, expressing a feeling that you have kept hidden. These moments may seem insignificant, but they are seismic for your inner world. They are the first tremors of freedom, shaking loose the old patterns of self-neglect and creating space for authenticity to grow. The act of choosing yourself also challenges the stories you have been telling yourself about worthiness. You may have believed that prioritizing yourself makes you selfish, that your feelings are less important than others, or that your desires should be silenced for the sake of harmony. These beliefs are remnants of survival strategies, tools that once kept you safe from criticism, anger, abandonment, but they are no longer necessary. They can be unlearned. You begin to see that self-respect and love are not only acceptable, they are essential. The more you choose yourself, the more your life aligns with your truth, and the more energy you have to give authentically to others, not from obligation or fear, but from genuine presence. The fear of disappointing others is real, and it can feel paralyzing. You might anticipate backlash or rejection before you even act, imagining worst-case scenarios in vivid detail. But the reality is that true connection does not require sacrificing yourself. Those who truly care for you will respect your honesty, even if it initially causes discomfort. And those who cannot accept you as you are were never meant to be the foundation of your life anyway. Choosing yourself is not about rejecting others. It is about creating a life where your presence is grounded in truth rather than fear. It is about moving from a life of reaction to one of intentionality. Every act of choosing yourself reinforces a profound internal truth: you have value, your feelings matter, and your needs deserve attention. With each small decision, you rewire your understanding of love, belonging, and courage. You learn that setting boundaries is not rejection, but a declaration that your life has limits that must be honored. You learn that saying no is not betrayal, but self-respect. You learn that taking up space in the world is not arrogance, but a natural and necessary expression of who you are. Choosing yourself also requires patience and self-compassion. You will not unlearn decades of patterns overnight. There will be moments when old fears resurface, when the instinct to please, hide, or shrink feels overwhelming. But these moments are not failure. They are evidence of the work being done beneath the surface. Each time you notice the old scripts rising, and each time you choose differently, you strengthen your courage. Each act of self-prioritization, no matter how small, is a step toward reclaiming the life you were meant to live. The emotional transformation of choosing yourself is subtle at first, but profound over time. You begin to feel more grounded, more present, and more aligned with your inner truth. You notice a lightness where there was once tension, a clarity where there was confusion, and a confidence where there was uncertainty. You start to see that the world does not collapse when you honor yourself. Instead, it responds with a new kind of balance. Your relationships become more honest, your choices more intentional, and your sense of self more resilient. Choosing yourself is not a single act. It is a practice, a daily commitment to live according to your own truth. It begins with small, manageable steps and grows into a life defined by authenticity rather than obligation. You begin to see that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act despite it. You begin to understand that the life you want, the life that feels full and real, is not found by shrinking or hiding, but by standing firmly in your own truth. The invitation now is to notice where you've been neglecting yourself, to observe the moments when you prioritize others at the expense of your own well-being, and to take one small action today. Perhaps it is setting a boundary that feels uncomfortable, voicing a feeling you have silenced, or claiming a choice that honors your needs. Each act, though small, is revolutionary. It is a declaration that your life is yours to live fully, unapologetically, and courageously. Through this practice, you discover that choosing yourself is not selfish, but sacred. It is the foundation for a life of courage, authenticity, and deep connection. Each moment you step into your own truth strengthens your inner voice, reinforces your self-worth, and opens the door to a life where you are fully present, fully alive, and fully yourself. Choosing yourself is the act that transforms fear into freedom, self-doubt into self-respect, and hiding into wholehearted living. Becoming whole again is not a destination. It is a journey that unfolds slowly, quietly, and often in ways you do not expect. After years of hiding, shrinking, and silencing parts of yourself to survive, the process of reclaiming your fullness can feel overwhelming. You may wonder if it is even possible to step into a life where you are completely seen, completely trusted, and completely free to express every part of who you are. And yet, the very act of wanting it is the first proof that it is possible. The longing you feel, the ache to live fully, authentically, and unapologetically is a signal from your deeper self, guiding you back to the life that was always waiting for you beneath the masks and the fear. The inner struggle in this stage is complex. You have learned to survive by hiding, by adjusting, by shrinking, and by placing others' comfort above your own. Now the world feels both inviting and intimidating. There is a tug of war between the familiar safety of invisibility and the frightening yet exhilarating promise of living openly. Fear can whisper that being fully yourself is reckless, that it might undo everything you have worked to build, or that it could lead to rejection, loss, or disappointment. But those fears, as loud as they can be, are not the truth. They are echoes of old survival strategies, remnants of the conditioning that taught you to hide. In reality, choosing to show up fully is the path toward liberation, and it carries the promise of connection, self-respect, and fulfillment that hiding could never provide. Wholeness requires a willingness to face yourself honestly. You must see the parts of you that you have ignored, dismissed, or judged harshly over the years. The fears you carried, the mistakes you regret, the vulnerabilities you buried, they are not obstacles, they are pieces of the puzzle that make you whole. Embracing them is not always easy. It takes courage to look in the mirror and say, this is me in all my complexity and imperfection, and I am worthy of love and life. It takes strength to acknowledge the ways you have been complicit in silencing yourself and to forgive yourself for the survival strategies that no longer serve you. The emotional transformation that comes from this work is profound. As you reclaim your authenticity, you begin to feel a sense of relief, almost like breathing deeply after holding your breath for years. The parts of you that were tucked away for safety start to feel alive again, and a sense of alignment emerges between your inner life and your outer life. You notice that your presence matters, that your voice carries weight, and that the world can tolerate, even embrace the fullness of who you are. The small acts of truth you have practiced, expressing feelings, setting boundaries, saying no, stepping into vulnerability, begin to compound. They form a foundation of self-trust and self-respect that supports the life you are building. Reclaiming wholeness also teaches you that perfection is not the goal. You do not need to fix every part of yourself or erase every past mistake. Wholeness is not about being flawless. It is about being fully present, fully alive, and fully yourself. It is about integrating all aspects of your life, your strengths, your flaws, your joys, your sorrows, into a coherent sense of self that is resilient, compassionate, and authentic. It is the understanding that your value is inherent, not conditional on how much you accommodate others, perform, or hide. The journey toward wholeness also transforms your relationships. When you show up fully, without apology or pretense, you attract people who can meet you at the same level. You begin to recognize those who respect your boundaries, honor your truth, and appreciate your presence, and you learn to release those who cannot. This shift can feel risky, even painful, because it may disrupt long-standing patterns or relationships that once provided comfort, even if that comfort came at the cost of your authenticity. Yet in this disruption lies freedom. The relationships that survive are deeper, richer, and more meaningful because they are based on reality rather than illusion. Every choice you make to honor yourself, every moment you refuse to shrink, every act of courage to express your truth contributes to this ongoing reconstruction of your life. You may stumble, you may retreat, but each time you choose authenticity over safety, connection over fear, and self-respect over approval, you reclaim a piece of the person you were always meant to be. Wholeness is built one courageous act at a time, and each act strengthens the foundation for the next. Finally, becoming whole again is about presence. It is about inhabiting your life fully, rather than observing it from a distance behind masks and walls. It is about feeling the full spectrum of your emotions without judgment, expressing your needs without fear, and engaging with the world from a place of truth rather than self-protection. It is about understanding that hiding was never weakness, it was survival. And now, living openly, vulnerably, and authentically is your greatest strength. This journey is ongoing, and it is lifelong. There will always be moments that challenge your courage, test your boundaries, and tempt you to retreat into old patterns. But each time you step forward, each time you reclaim a part of yourself that was hidden, you are reminded that wholeness is not a final destination, but a practice. It is a practice of choosing yourself daily, of honoring your feelings, of trusting your intuition, and of embracing every part of your story. You are capable of living fully. You are capable of reclaiming every piece of yourself that you tucked away for safety. You are capable of showing up in the world without apology, without fear, and without shrinking. Each act of authenticity, no matter how small, is a declaration: I am here, I am enough, I will not disappear to make others comfortable. And in those declarations, in those courageous choices, your life begins to expand in ways you may have never imagined. You begin to breathe, to connect, to love, and to live as the whole, resilient and unapologetically real person you were always meant to be.